Are you all right?
I think my leg is broken.
The desert burned like a dying furnace, its last breath spilling over the horizon in hues of crimson and gold. Sheriff Cole Maddox rode through the wasteland alone, his horse's hooves kicking up spirals of dust that shimmered in the fading light. The air was dry enough to split lips and silent enough to make a man hear his own heartbeat. Ahead lay the ghost town of Dry Hollow, a scattering of half-collapsed buildings and broken memories. Once a bustling mining camp, now nothing more than wind, wood, and whispers. Cole's spurs jingled with every step as he dismounted in front of the saloon. The sign above the door hung by a single nail, groaning in the evening wind. He pushed the batwing doors open, the hinges screeching like something alive. The air inside was heavy, dust, stale whiskey, and blood. The floorboards creaked under his boots as his eyes adjusted to the dim light. Then he saw him. Luke Harlow. Once the fastest gun west of the Rio Verde. Once Cole's friend. Now just another dying outlaw sitting in the back of an empty saloon. His shirt was dark with blood, his hand trembling around a revolver that he didn't have the strength to lift. "Didn't think you'd come," Luke croaked, forcing a smile that never reached his eyes. Cole's jaw tightened. "You sent for me. I keep my word." Luke coughed, wincing as pain shot through him. He looked older than his 35 years, eyes sunken, skin gray under the sweat. "I didn't figure you'd come to comfort me," he rasped. "I didn't." Cole leaned against a pillar, watching him. "I came to see if it was true." Luke's grin faltered. "That I'm dying. That you were man enough to face it." For a long moment, neither spoke. The wind rattled the loose shutters outside, and somewhere a rope creaked on a broken signpost. Luke's revolver slipped from his hand and hit the floor with a dull clatter. "I never wanted it to end like this," Luke said. "But it had to, didn't it? You with your badge, me with my greed. I took the gold and left you for dead. That's the story they'll tell." Cole's eyes darkened. "That's the truth." Luke let out a dry laugh that turned into a cough. "Then let me write the ending, partner." He lifted his head, eyes glassy but pleading. "Please, one shot. Kill me. You owe me that much." The sheriff's hand hovered near his gun. The weight of memory pressed down on him. The long nights on the trail, the laughter around campfires, the bond that once felt unbreakable. He saw not the outlaw before him but the man who had once saved his life, who dreamed of buying land, settling down, living clean. "Please," Luke whispered again, voice barely audible. Cole looked away, his throat tight. The sun outside slipped below the ridge, painting the saloon in blood-red light. The shadow of the sheriff stretched long across the floor, toward the dying man who had once been his brother. He took a deep breath, the silence thick enough to choke on, and said only, "You don't get to choose how it ends, Luke." The outlaw's faint smile faltered. The desert wind sighed through the open door, carrying the sound of distant thunder. Night was coming, and with it, a reckoning neither man could escape. The air in the saloon hung thick, heavy with silence and the sour tang of spilled whiskey. Sheriff Cole Maddox stood a few paces away from Luke Harlow, his hand resting on the butt of his revolver, his jaw set like carved stone. The outlaw's breathing came shallow and uneven, his shirt clinging to his chest with sweat and blood. Each rise and fall of his ribcage sounded like a clock ticking down to the inevitable. Luke's eyes, those wild, restless eyes that once gleamed with mischief, had gone dull, but a spark of stubbornness still lived there. "Go on," he rasped, his voice little more than a whisper. "You know I deserve it. End it." Cole didn't answer. He just stared at the dying man, his face unreadable. The two had shared a lifetime in the span of a few years, robbing stagecoaches, gambling away fortunes, chasing women and dreams that never lasted. Then came the night when Luke chose gold over loyalty, leaving Cole in the dirt with a bullet in his side and a badge stained with betrayal. Now here they were, two old ghosts of the West, circling the end like vultures. "I waited for this," Luke said after a moment. His voice trembled, but not from fear. "Every day, I knew you'd find me. You always were the one man who could." Cole's gaze drifted to the window where the last embers of daylight bled through the cracks. "You could have run," he said quietly. "Could have left the territory, started over." Luke laughed weakly, a bitter sound. "Started over. Men like me don't get new beginnings, Sheriff. Just slower endings." The sheriff walked to the counter, picked up an old bottle, and poured 2 shots of whiskey into chipped glasses. He slid one across the table to Luke, who managed to lift it with trembling fingers. The drink burned his throat, but he smiled faintly. "Tastes like old times," Luke muttered. "Old times are dead," Cole said flatly, setting his glass down. Silence settled again, broken only by the groan of the wind through the saloon boards. Luke leaned back, his eyes half closed. "You ever wonder," he said softly, "if we were on the wrong sides all along? Maybe I just had the courage to stop pretending I was good." Cole's voice came low and steady. "You call betrayal courage. I call it survival," Luke murmured. "Same as what you're doing now." Cole's eyes hardened. "I'm not surviving. I'm enduring." The words hung in the air like smoke. Luke coughed again, the sound harsh and wet. "I can't take much more, Cole. Don't let me die like an animal in this hole." His hand shook as he reached for his revolver, but he didn't raise it. He simply laid it across his lap, barrel pointed toward the floor. "Please, 1 shot. Quick and clean. That's all I'm asking." Cole's fingers brushed the grip of his gun. The weight of years pressed on him. The good days, the bad, the laughter, the betrayal. He saw Luke as he'd once been. Young, reckless, alive. And then he saw the man before him. Broken, ruined by choices he couldn't take back. The sheriff drew the revolver, the metal catching the flicker of lamplight. Luke's eyes closed, his lips parting slightly as if he were ready for peace. But Cole hesitated. He lowered the weapon. "No," he said quietly. Luke's head snapped up, his face twisting in confusion and rage. "What do you mean, no? You don't get to choose your end," Cole said, holstering the gun. "You'll live long enough to face it." Luke's breath came fast and sharp. "You can't do this. You ain't got that kind of cruelty in you." Cole stepped closer, crouching beside him. He reached into his coat and pulled out a canteen, pressing it into Luke's hand. "Cruelty." His voice was cold now. "Mercy's the cruelest thing I got left." He stood, turned, and began to walk toward the door. Behind him came the faint metallic click of a revolver being cocked. Luke's voice trembled but carried an edge of desperate pride. "Don't make me beg again, Cole. You owe me this." Cole stopped in the doorway, his back to the dying man. The setting sun cast his shadow long and dark across the floor. The silence between them stretched until it hummed like a live wire. Then, one gunshot. The echo rolled through the saloon, bounced off the walls, and faded into the wind. Cole didn't move for several seconds. When he finally turned, Luke was slumped against the table, eyes open but empty, the revolver fallen from his grasp. Cole stepped forward slowly, looking down at the man who'd once been his brother in all but blood. "You always were faster," he whispered. Outside, The storm that had been threatening all evening finally broke. Rain fell hard and sudden, washing over the empty streets of Dry Hollow. Cole holstered his weapon, stepped out onto the porch, and looked up at the sky. The rain pattered against his hat brim, soaking into his coat. He didn't look back. As he mounted Boone and rode away, the lightning flashed once, illuminating the saloon behind him, the ghost town reclaiming one more soul. By dawn, the desert would be clean again, and the wind would carry no sound but silence.